Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with Steve, Matt, and we've got Johnny Waite all the way from Ontario, Canada, and we're going to be talking a lot today about racing, performance, and now Johnny has a BA in psychology, so we're going to talk a lot about psychology today and the ins and outs, how to prep for races, how this latest COVID thing has affected us all, how to manage stress. And we've also got qualifications in level 2 coaching, certified hypnotherapist. You've also a professional certification in nutrition, and you want to talk a lot today about mindful meditation. And, you know, just to give everyone a background, Johnny is a very experienced speaker, 20 years of corporate talks around the world, and we're so lucky to have him today. So welcome along, Johnny.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to do my best after that introduction. I'm feeling good.
So I was just thinking, I thought it was just my mate from Lake Tahoe.
Well, prep for this.
He did the research.
I've done the research.
Oh my gosh. And also a hypnotherapist, so it's potentially we will say things that we don't mean to say that Johnny has actually planted in our previous discussions.
And we'll blame Johnny for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. I'll draw it out very craftily.
Ooh, sneaky.
So I met Johnny at Lake Tahoe at the World Series Spartan thingy.
Yep.
And that was honestly one of the greatest weeks of work I've ever had. That inspired me, that changed me, that made me look at everything and everyone a little bit differently. I even feel the need to pick up heavy stuff and walk around with it for apparently no reason. Just little things like that I've been inspired to do through that Spartan community. And I thought it was amazing, just this vibe. At that event we went to, they were incorporating a lot of the CrossFit guys as well. They're extending this network into more of the trail racing guys. We're bringing a lot more of the CrossFit guys, and it seemed to be in a real state of change. Like a lot of things leading up to 2020, we're really evolving and building up some momentum, and then 2020 come and kicks the stuffing out of absolutely bloody everything for all sorts of different reasons. You know, sometimes when we think everything's falling apart, you know, maybe it's fallen together. I mean, do we have a silver lining with all this chaos? That's what I really want to talk to you today about is how to get our head right in these moments of chaos, because I know how influential you were throughout that whole Spartan thing and how many lives you've changed, but there'd be tricks and techniques, everything from like your death races to your adventure stuff to the, come on, give us some ways of surviving. Well, I mean, seriously, this guy invents and survives death races, so I think he's all right with this COVID thing. So he's got some tricks he can teach us here.
Death races, I still can't get over that.
It's funny that Spartan journey and where that's gone over the last 10 years. And Joe DeSena, a very good friend of mine, has become a good friend of yours. And Spartan really, my introduction to that was in 2010. I went and did a race in Montreal. It was the first race ever in Canada, and I think there were 608 people there. And it was fantastic. I went out, was super inspired and stoked, and then stumbled into this death racing world. And it was just as Spartan was taking off and the whole death race thing was taking off. And so I was really lucky to get in sort of at the ground level on that and see it grow. And so right now it is huge. Like, it is absolutely massive. It's been one of the fastest growing sports in the world. Obstacle racing, Tough Mudder was another huge one that Spartan recently purchased. The other side of my world is coaching. Like, I do a lot of personal coaching, life coaching stuff, and speaking. And that part hasn't changed. That part I'm still going full tilt. But the racing, I would do 10 races a year in half a dozen countries. And that's just completely screeched to a halt. But it's really given me a good opportunity to reflect and relate more to my coaching clients, because when people come to me with coaching, usually it's because there's a life transition. They've lost their job, something's happened, they've got to pivot, they've got to think of a new direction. And it's very easy to advise them when my life is just going tickety-boo. Right?
Yeah.
I can speak in theory all day long, but suddenly to have my own world where I'm like, oh, wow, a huge chunk of my income, a tremendous source of my own personal psychic kick, the stimulation that it brings to me and the satisfaction it gives me to put these races on is gone. And I have to generate from scratch my own positive energy. I've got to generate my own reason to get up in the morning. I've got to generate my own enthusiasm for yet another coaching call. Whereas, before it was a nice change of pace from the race directing. And being able to look at these very real challenges in my own life actually helps me a ton as a coach and as a speaker and just as a person.
Yeah. Because honestly, The problem is when you are a healer or a therapist or a coach or whatever it is, we tend to build some boundaries. We try to create almost like a alter ego or something. So, no, I'm in my zone now, I'm the coach. And when things are going well, it's kind of easy to do that, like you said. But when, as the coach and as that alter ego, your worlds collide where all of a sudden things are not as you expected, and as a professional, you're not exactly the same because of the way the world's changed. That's when you really learn a lot more about yourself. But that's also when your clients and customers learn a lot more about you, because to see how you deal with it.
And where they can actually get a lot more value out of you as well, because when we're putting on our perfect hat, there isn't that same authenticity. And I actually really quite enjoy sharing my own bumps and bruises along the way. That anything that I'm telling them, not there's a lot of telling in coaching anyway, right? It's a lot of asking and drawing this stuff out. But anything I'm sharing with them, it's lessons learned as opposed to here's what I think.
Yeah.
And so, but my philosophy on life in general is that you got to show up and you got to be ready for whatever happens. That's what I love about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The idea that that leaving the door in the morning is an adventure. You never know what's going to happen out there.
Yeah.
And so many people are very committed to finding a way to sneak down the middle of life without any bumps and bruises. And it works for a little while, and it's not very exciting or interesting while you're doing it, but it never works forever. You can build the safest, most careful life and put up all the guardrails and all the airbags and everything else, and still somewhere along the way, you're going to get a cancer diagnosis, or your kid's going to get shoplifting, or something's going to happen, right? That you couldn't have planned for. And then you just don't know what to do. So in my mind, every single thing that can happen to me, everything that can happen to me, good, bad, indifferent, is an adventure. A funny, weird example. So back this spring, just after the whole COVID thing happened, I got diagnosed with some skin cancer. And it's fine. I actually just go to the dermatologist today, and everything seems to be on the right path, and we seem to have it nipped. But great. I mean, I can bemoan the hell of that and why, oh man, I wish I hadn't been so much in the sun, and I wish that this didn't. Well, it happened, dude. It happened. And so I got the fun experience of putting Effidex on my face and watching it turn into blisters like somebody doing brake burns on a motorcycle on both cheeks. Yeah. And but again, why wish that away? Like whatever you're experiencing, why wish it away? And I'll tell you, I've always had that theory. In theory, it's easy when life is going well. And I had a friend many years ago who said, you're happy because of your life. I mean, anyone who had your life would be happy. Look at how lucky you've been in life. And I said, I don't know, dude, I guess you're right. I've got lots to be grateful for. I'd like to think my life is turning out like this because I'm happy and positive. But then not too long after that, actually, the wheels fell off back in 2008. And I've told this story too many times. I won't go into the whole story. But, pretty much everything that go wrong went wrong. I had a failed political campaign. My marriage fell apart. My business tanked. I moved from a great, big, beautiful house into my truck for the better part of a year. Like really, 2008 was a complete and total reset where I spent a lot of time reading books from the library in the park because it's all that I could afford to do.
Wow.
And yet, looking back on it, I was as happy then as I am now. I wouldn't wish that experience out. 1 second of that experience would I wish away, because there were some amazing things that happened during that. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years later, I'd stumbled into this whole racing world, Spartan race, the death race, things like that. And I always say that I could never, ever have finished the death race in 2006. I was posh. My life was pretty darn easy. 2011 comes around, and I've been kicked squarely in the nuts several times and survived it and come out the other end of it with a little bit more fortitude. And then when you're in that situation and you're on night number 3 of no sleep in a rainstorm that hasn't let up in 2 days, doing tasks that you really wouldn't have believed you could have done before the race even started, but now you've got so much invested in, there's so much sunk cost that you're not going to not do this next thing too. You start to realize that this is the stuff that if this were thrown at you on a normal Tuesday, you'd say, well, this is bullshit. I don't want this. I'm bailing out.
Yeah.
But you've paid for this. You've traveled to Vermont for this. You've signed up for this. And I really started to realize that being able to transfer that same energy back to other areas in your life is huge. Mm-hmm. And I've led a lot of expeditions, whether through Spartan, they have a thing called a Gogi, or independent ones, mountain climbing, things like that we've done, where when it gets really, really brutal, I always say to everyone, hey, it's going to be Tuesday anyway. And that became my philosophy, because usually racing will start on a Friday and end on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever. But Tuesday it's going to be done, and you're going to be back in the cafe, and you're either going to be telling the story about why you quit or how you finished. And it's going to be Tuesday anyway.
Yeah.
And so, no matter what's happening, like when I found out I had some skin cancer on my face, okay, well, it's going to be August anyway. And when August comes around, do I want to have spent the last 4 months bitching and complaining and moaning and saying this is the worst thing in the world? Or I want to have gone and crushed life and had a great time, and this is just another story I get to tell. So that kind of resilience and that kind of fortitude, there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg there, because a lot of times you don't put yourself into these situations in the first place without some willingness to lean in and some fortitude. But if you are willing to take on tough situations and you do come out the other side of them successful, or bowed and bruised but not completely broken, and you can pick yourself up and go again, you're going to get stronger. And that's where I say that it doesn't matter how much you try and avoid difficulty. At some point, life is going to throw it squarely in your path no matter what. And the more you've tried to avoid it, and the more that you've pretended it's not going to happen, the less prepared you're going to be for when it comes. And so just one last philosophy on that, and it's this, that we all like to think that we would be awesome. In a tough situation, we would be awesome. We watch movies, right? We watch Taken, and oh man, I'd get that guy, or about the plane being hijacked. I'd be the one who jumped up and took down that hijacker. Yeah. And yet then when life puts us in a situation, we're like, oh my God, why did this happen? Why am I here? As opposed to, well, who are you going to be about it? And so when life is easy, you don't have to be awesome. When life is easy, you just have to show up and everything happens. When life gets hard, that's when you're called upon to be awesome. So if you truly want to be awesome and want to have an awesome life, you gotta be ready for the difficulty and the challenges. So that's not really coaching per se, but it's just a philosophy that I think that it takes you a long way.
Yeah. I imagine that just going for a jog with Steve in the morning would be my version of a death race. But
I have a friend who used to walk to Tim Hortons, or he still does, walks to Tim Hortons. You know what Tim Hortons is? It's the Canadian coffee shop. I think you have Costa down there. Anyway, Tim Hortons, there's like, in my town of 30,000 people, there are 14 Tim Hortons around like every corner, right?
Okay.
And anyway, so one day he messaged me, he said, yeah, I've been walking to the Tim Hortons with my wife in the morning. It's been raining. I think it's a lot like one of your death races.
That maybe the bit he's correct about was, I believe that there's a lot of like mental stuff they do to you too. Like part of the death race,
Absolutely.
It's fully to break you down for the purpose of rebuilding you, from what I understand. But even mentally, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there a section where in one of the death races where they got people to write stuff about bad things about the people, the things that they didn't like about the people, or something, to when they're at their lowest point, they then went and screwed with them by saying you also just suck as well?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's pretty diabolical when you're at your lowest. And so it's funny, Joe and I had a long conversation with that one time. I just finished directing a death race, and I said to him, I think that we go into this thinking we're building people up, and we're not. We're sifting. We've got a sifter, and at the end of it, we're going to have the really, really tough people are still here and everyone else sifted through, but we're not making anyone tougher. Like these people, they were tough to begin with, or they wouldn't still be here. Yeah. And yes, we've separated the wheat from the chaff. And that's where we had another thing called Agoge, which is based on a Greek school. Agoge was that the Spartans went through. And the idea was it would be death race type difficulty. And we've done Agoges in China, in Mongolia. I led one in Scotland in the Isle of Skye, or led a part of that event. And these events, it's like death race difficulty, but without the mental torture. And the idea is, if we actually give you incredibly hard things to do and allow you to support one another, how much more can you do? And they're actually capable of doing even more and learning things along the way. So that's something that the mental side of the Spartan race. So, but actually, just a crazy example. The first one that I did of the death race story in Vermont in 2010, we got sent with directions 20 miles down in this direction, down this trail, and you get to the other end, and the guy waiting there says, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Picks up the phone, calls, and says, "Oh no, you're supposed to go 20 miles the other way." Oh. And so you go 20 miles back to where you started. Scream at the guy who gave you the wrong directions, keep going the other way. And some people got back and just quit.
Yeah.
Screw you. This guy made a mistake. I'd like to register a protest. I want my money back because he sent me the wrong way, as opposed to the other guy who just runs the 20 miles back, goes the 20 miles the other way, and realizes that this is just part of the task. So the most incredible mental challenge of 2010 was after 45 hours of racing, and that was to make this last cutoff. You were told that here's the rest of the race. And they basically laid out about another 60 hours of stuff that you would need to do. And you knew based on what you'd done so far, how long the rest of this was going to take, and said, we need to know right now, are you in or you're out? Because if you're in, you're in, and there's no other chance to drop out at all. If you're out, you're out, but there's 60 more hours. And about half the people at that point said, I couldn't possibly do that, I'm out. And the other half, including myself, said, great, I'm in. Tell me where to go. And they said, okay, go down to this church. And so depending on when you got there, the meeting was at 3:00 at this church. And that's when they were going to start the second phase of the race. And so we all went to this church, and everyone had raced for, between 40 and 45 hours. And you went into this church and they said, okay, everyone who's continuing, go over here. So I went over and sat over there. Everyone who has dropped out, come over here. And they said, okay, the race is over. You sitting over there have finished, and the rest of you haven't. And the idea was, are you willing to commit no matter what? And all they wanted to find out is if you're willing to commit. The last challenge was just simply committing to another 60 hours.
Wow.
And then you didn't actually have to do the 60 hours. Nobody knew that.
Oh, wow.
But I talked to a lot of people who were really bitter about that, because they're like, I did as much work. I got to that checkpoint before you did, and you finished. I didn't. I'm like, I didn't make the rules up, but that's a pretty sick twist there. So,
and you thought immediately, I want to run these races. I want to be that's amazing. What a great story.
Well, they are awesome. And so I was really grateful that by 2014, I'd been around enough races and done enough races and helped out enough races that Joe and Andy were getting very busy with Spartan Race. Like they didn't really have a whole lot of time for the death race, because it's not a moneymaker. It's an offshoot thing. And so I got started to be brought in to direct those. So I directed 4 races in a row. One in Mexico that we did down there. The winter ones were really crazy, because imagine all that same stuff, but in a Vermont winter. We were spending considerable amount of time in a freezing cold river, like snow everywhere, and you're up to the river, up to your neck for like walking half mile up the river kind of thing.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm really grateful for those experiences, and it kind of makes everything else seem pretty doable. That's the cool thing with it.
Amazing.
But I was going to say, you talk to people who survive something terrible, a plane crash or cancer or whatever else, and they come out the other side and they say, now I know what's important. And I'm not putting this on that same, metaphysical level of understanding what's important, but in terms of understanding what's survivable, you get a pretty good understanding of, man, if I can survive that, this trouble at work is really not that big a deal, actually.
No. And that's like, mate, the other guy from Lake Tahoe, one of the other people from Lake Tahoe, the fear guru, I've just bloody forgotten his name now. Patrick does the Red Bull aeroplane racing. So his story was where he witnessed that plane crash, had major fear, and then never did anything because of his fear. And then once he started trying to conquer his fears, he realized that you can't have joy without that fear, and how important it is to have the fear so that you can actually experience the heights of joy that you can only get by conquering something that is a fear of yours. And so again, 100%. When you haven't been tested, if you don't know what you're made of, and like you're saying before, people always think if they were tested, they'd come out with something Hollywood. But the funny thing is just challenging yourself seems to be a big part of it. So with your psychology and that, is there things that you use in your coaching that you've learnt from these weird people that want to do death races and stuff? And are there techniques that you've taught people on how to deal with everyday stress?
Well, there sure is. And a big one is, generally when somebody's coming to me for coaching, they're already leaning in, right? They're already taking on something a little bit uncomfortable, letting somebody else tap into their life. So it might not be entirely representative of everyone out there, but hopefully most of the people listening are also people who are looking at how can I now further my life. So my thinking when I'm working with people is the very first thing you need to do is look at how things are, because people want to tell me all the time how they wish things were or how they wish things weren't, but that's not going to do you any good. How are things? Like, truly deal with reality as it is, because wishing it was different isn't going to do a single thing. All it's going to do is cause you heartache and grief. And then the other thing is, it's actually going to take away the energy and the power that you need to make change. So obviously, as a coach, I'm going to say to somebody, describe to me the life that you want. Tell me exactly what you would want it to be, because a big part of my job is helping you create a path to get there. But the other very, very important thing is to deal with, okay, and where are you now? Honestly, completely, frankly, where are you? And, people say all the time, I just wish, that saying, I just wish I had more money. I just wish that my kid wasn't sick. I just wish I hadn't lost my job. And so they've thrown two things there. I just wish. You're absolutely right. That's all you're doing. You're just wishing. And rather than I just wish, it's I want to bring about this. So I wish that I had a better job. Okay, well, that's getting you absolutely nothing. I want to bring about my having a better job. Oh, okay, awesome. We can do that. We can work on that. And then the other part of it that I think is really, really critical is to start with your gratitude before your grievances. Because if you just want to tell me all the things that are wrong, there's no energy there to build anything on. And so I'll do a lot of work with somebody to say, okay, I get it. I'm clear that you're not happy with this, but let's look at the good stuff. And there's so much good stuff in everyone's life, really, truly in everyone's life, especially the person who says there isn't. When you dig in a little bit, there's lots there. I read an essay all the time by a guy named Rob Bresney, and it basically starts out with, you woke up this morning, your eyes opened, or they didn't. And even if they didn't, you still were breathing and breathing in oxygen at the right level and breathing out carbon dioxide at the level. And the sun is 93 million miles away, and it's the exact distance that creates this sphere. And like, I break it down to this, this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I could name without pause 100 different people who are involved in this t-shirt. The person who picked the cotton, the person who spun the cotton, the person who made the machine that spun the cotton, the person who made this dye, the person who made this design, the person who boxed it, the person who shipped it, the person who unpacked it, put it on the store shelf, and it goes on and on and on. And that's just a t-shirt. And then there's your car and there's that microphone in front of you. And so if you start with gratitude and actually realize how crazy blessed you are, and the fact that you're awake today with an opportunity to go and create something, now let's take that energy and put that in the direction that you want to go. And so the person can give me all kinds of grievances. Let's use that as fuel. I get it. Like, discontent is actually, if with no discontent, there's no progress at all. Like, if I'm not discontented, I'm not going to do anything. But discontent alone is going to create absolutely nothing other than misery. So let's take that discontent, wrap it in all this gratitude for all this other stuff, and give ourselves credit, for what we've done. Like, a big exercise to do with people is I say, tell me something good that's going on in your world right now. And they'll tell me something good. I say, okay, now tell me something that you wish was different, something that you want to change. Okay, they'll tell me that. I say, okay, now tell me some successes you've had in the past and some skills that you've built up. And then I'll say, okay, cool. Now what further skills are you going to need to develop to get to where you want to get to? And by doing it that way, something good, something that you're aspiring to, something you'd be proud of. Okay, and now what do you need? Because realistically, the only thing that's keeping you from where you're at now and where you want to get to is a skill set or a discipline or a something. There's something you have to generate to get there. But you can't do that unless you give yourself credit for the fact that, well, obviously I have abilities and obviously I've had successes in the past. And obviously I have something to draw on from a confidence standpoint. And when you look at it that way, you can generate all this positive energy, because usually when people come to a coach and they want to change something, they start with negative energy. I don't like this. I want that instead, and I don't have that. So there's some magic in having them develop that positive energy around it that they can apply to it.
It's incredible. It's amazing how you mentioned that word positive energy and attitude. And I remember a photo, I think it was on your website, where there's a photo of you sitting in a frozen lake with your arms out like this on the ice, and you're sitting there like you're in a jacuzzi with bikini models. How do you, it's like the word, I would, we're Australian, we're pretty sensitive to the cold, but how did you have that? You could see you were relaxed. I mean, how do you get to that point? Is that due to the death races, or how do you get there?
No. So I've been doing that for years. So actually, my wife owns a resort in Haliburton, Ontario, and that's in the lake directly out front. And that was in the spring when the ice had started to recede from the shoreline. So it's still full ice. So I just waited out, put my arms on the ice, and sat down. But we've actually become pretty famous for friends will come up and visit us in the winter. In the winter, there's 18 inches of ice out there. Like you can drive a truck across the lake. We'll take axes and we'll hack and hack and hack until we built out a 4 foot by 4 foot hole. And then you jump in, go completely under, and then you climb back out. And so people come up and do that. But you know, they're in and they're out. They're in and they're out. But the key is you get in, you take a second, you acclimate, and then you can actually have a conversation. You can calm down, get your breathing calmed down. So Wim Hof is a guy who's become very famous for this, the Polish guy. And we had him on the Spartan Up podcast a while ago. And I believe strongly in that, you know, the idea of a cold shower every day and getting cold water whenever you can. But that's one of those things that instinctively we stay away from with every ounce of our fiber being that cold, right? And the idea of having cold water thrown on you seems like the worst thing in the world. Getting in water that cold seems just atrocious. But once you embrace it and dive into it, it is the best feeling in the world. It really, really is.
It takes your breath away.
It does.
So when you're sitting in your bucket of ice and doing your death race with people trying to mentally destroy you and stuff like that, is mindfulness helpful, or are we better off dissociating? Like, because I'm imagining to go to my happy place. I'm not going to be.
Sure.
I'll be thinking I'm on the beach. I'll be in that jacuzzi that Steve's imagining with the bikini girls, not sitting there actually going, "This is really bloody cold," and doing this death race in the middle of nowhere. I'd be trying to go to my happy place. What do you reckon? Because I know you're all about mindfulness. Can you dissociate and be mindful?
Well, there's definitely a time and a place for both. There are stretches where you really do. You just get robotic and I'm just not going to think about what I'm doing right now. And if there's a long, tedious stretch that's just, you know, the next 20-mile hike, there's a certain element of mindfulness in that too, though, which is rather than hating every step and rather than think about how many steps there are to go, you can actually just start tuning into your body. I learned emergency hypnosis, and it was put into play. I used to coach wrestling, and I had a kid who broke his arm backwards really badly. He got thrown, put his arm up to break his fall, and the elbow compound fractured the wrong way. And I just finished taking this emergency hypnosis, and I was able to actually block the pain. And what I was doing is I was tapping his head to distract him and talking to keep his mind off it. And I started asking him, "How's your hip? How's your left hip?" He said, No, it's my right arm. I said, "Oh, I know about your right arm. How's your left hip?" "Well, my left hip is fine." "How's your left ear?" "I'm really concerned about your left ear." What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, just tell me how your ear is." "My ear is fine." And he really completely forgot about his arm.
Wow.
And it sounds crazy, but like I was able to get him so distracted from that. So there's an element of that, but it's still mindfulness, because you'll say, "I don't want to focus on how much my feet hurt right now. So I'm actually just going to think about how clean and fresh this air is in this cold forest at night. Wow, I'm going to really focus on the breathing right now." And suddenly you're not thinking about your sore knees or your sprained ankle or your whatever. But practicing that in general, practicing mindfulness in general, is a really fantastic way to look at life anyway, because so with meditation too, there's mindfulness meditation, which is the one that people talk the most about right now. But what we think about when we think about meditation, you know, everyone sort of pictures the om. That's actually not mindfulness. That's transcendental meditation. The idea that you are creating a mantra and you're focusing all of your energy on this mantra. So you're transcending all of the other stuff and focusing only on that. And so there's certainly a place for that. But mindfulness would be, I'm actually totally present to everything right now, and I'm not judging it. I'm present how much my feet hurt, and I'm not judging that. I'm present to the sound of that drill right beside my head while I'm trying to do this puzzle that I have to finish before I can go on to the next thing, but I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to bother with it. And a friend of mine, Jason Jack Sedek, he did a lot of work around cold water immersion. And this is before I really saw it as part of racing challenging. I just saw it as a polar bear dip. But he did a thing where he's in the river in Vermont. And he said, when I first would get in the river, I'd think, "Oh my God, this is cold. Oh my God, this hurts. Oh my God, I need to get out." And then he said, then I got to the point where it was, "Oh my God, this is cold. Oh my God, this hurts." And then I got to the point where it's just, "Oh my God, this is cold." And then he said, and then he got to just, "Oh." because you're attaching this judgment of I need to stop this thing that's happening, as opposed to just this is what's happening. And so that's mindfulness. Mindfulness is being able to accept what is as it is without judgment and just be with it. So the more you can practice that in general, in any area in your life, the more you're going to be able to tap into that when you really need to. A silly example, car accident, right? You're driving, car accident. Immediately, why did this happen? I wish this didn't happen. Oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. None of that is going to happen. But none of that's going to help. What's going to help is I've had a car accident. What am I going to do now? And that's one of my strongest philosophies is so what? No matter what happens, so what? So when you find out sorry about that car accident, you're going to be paralyzed the rest of your life. So what? So now what? So in the face of this, what am I going to do? Because wishing it was different isn't going to do a single thing. But mindfulness, if you've developed the capacity to accept things as they are and be with them, and realize that it can only be as it is, there's no other way it can possibly be. The minute something happens and you accept, well, this is what is so. I'm going to tell you a powerful story. I was in a course that involved a lot of this, and there was a woman who was very, very angry with the instructor, saying, "You can't tell me that I need to choose things as they are." He said, "That's exactly what I'm telling you." She said, "Well, I don't accept that." He said, "Well, tell me what's going on in your life that you're not accepting." And she said, "My 9-year-old daughter is in the hospital right now with cancer. I can't accept that." And he said, "I'm suggesting you have to accept that." And she said, "Well, I will never accept that." He said, "Okay, well, what's happening?" So she told him, "My 9-year-old daughter's in the hospital." He said, "No, tell me in more detail. How long has she been there, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Okay, now tell me what should be happening. She should be out playing with her friends. She should be at school. She should be doing this, that, whatever else." He said, "Okay, tell me again what's happening." And she said, "I just told you." He said, "Tell me again." So she told him again, "Tell me what should be happening." And people started getting defensive on her behalf, saying, hey, we get it. He said, "No, you don't get anything." And he had her say about 6 times what should be happening, what was happening. And she was crying and sobbing and so angry. And then all of a sudden she said, "I get it. I totally get it." He said, "What has changed during all this time that you told me what should be happening?" "Nothing. You see all the energy that is not available to your daughter right now because you're railing against this." He said, "I get that you would like her to be healthy and you're going to do everything you can do to help her get healthy. But the best way to do that is to accept it as it is. This is what is so. And once you do that and you take all that negative energy you're putting into wishing it was different, you can actually be there with your daughter, present to her and available with that energy for her." And I thought that is about as visceral an example of something you would never, ever, ever think you could accept. But once it is so, any energy you spend wishing it wasn't takes away from the energy you could actually bring to bear to create the most positive situation it can be. So from a racing standpoint, from a life standpoint, from an anything standpoint, that's the very, very, very most powerful, most basic thing a person can do is to start with reality, to start with what is so, and then say, so what, now what? So in the face of this, what am I going to do? And just to, we talked a bit at the start about the idea that right now, so many people are dealing with stuff they're not used to dealing with. This whole COVID situation, whether it's that your business that you'd been working for 10 years on, it was just at the cusp of success, and it's one that gets completely crushed by this, and you can't get through it, and it's going to be bankrupt. So what? And what I mean by that is, so this has happened, what now? And I think what people, when they lose something, whether it's a person that's close to them or an opportunity they've been working for or a job or whatever it was, our very first thought is, what did I lose? Right? What did I lose? And when we look at what did I lose, of course it's hard to accept that. Of course it's hard to embrace that because you've lost something and you want that thing back. And you feel like somehow by accepting that it's gone forever. As opposed to, what did I gain? What did I learn? So from that relationship, what did I gain? What did I learn? What can I now apply to other situations in my life? From that job, from that business, from whatever. So, somebody who has built up $1 million business and become very, very successful, if in fact it crashes, they have all the same skills that they built that business up with. They have lessons they didn't have beforehand. They have mistakes they don't have to make the second time. They can absolutely get there quicker the next time. if you've had a relationship and you're going to look honestly and say, where did I make mistakes there? It's why a lot of second marriages work out better than first marriages, because in the first marriage, you're a fuck up. Like, I'm making mistakes left, right, and center, right? And if I don't accept that and realize that, I'm going to be just as big a one in my second marriage. And my wife will attest that I'm not quite as big a screw up in this one as I was in the first one. Yeah. And so I'm not perfect by any stretch. But if you look at what did I learn, what did I gain, and what can I now take forward, every single situation has something positive in it. So it sounds like semantics and it sounds like mental tricks, and people will dismiss it as that. I have friends who say, oh yeah, well, that's all hocus pocus, airy fairy crap. But in fact, it's all that there is. All that you can do is look and say, how can I be about this? Like, I can't control how you are about something or how somebody else is about something or how COVID's going to happen or what the government's going to do. I can't control any of that. The only thing I can control is who I'm going to be about it. So if I can reflect on everything that's happened and actually be self-critical in a good way, give myself credit as well, but also say what was it about me? And I ask that a lot in coaching. I'll say, what is it about you that's contributing to the situation being the way you don't want it to be? And they'll start to tell me about something situational. I'll say, no, stop. We'll come to that. What is it about you, Matt, that's causing you to be stuck here? And then we'll get into the fear of commitment. We'll get into the procrastination. We'll get into the self-doubts and that sort of stuff. And once we address that, then we can actually start to tweak that. But until we look at who I am being about it, there's no power there at all. So again, from a mindfulness standpoint, it all comes back to actually being present to how things are, not wishing they were different, and then realizing how you can act powerfully.
Remember, we've had, there's this theme, and I just keep seeing this same theme. I tell you what, after all this podcasting done, I'm going to be like the most zen person. I'll be able to help anyone with this stuff. But I'm a good friend of mine, Ken Ware. He gets these people out of wheelchairs, and he deals with a lot of bombing victims and getting paraplegics walking and doing freaky sort of stuff. His basic philosophy is I don't really know. Let's just see where you're at. And he doesn't believe you can recalibrate. He doesn't mean you can rewind. You can't anything in the body. He says, where are you at right now? Let's remove all the emotion. You're in a position of safety. Let's just see where you're at right now and calibrate. And then we can start moving forward. Just accepting the fact that we're in this position, remove the angst and the emotion attached to it, because that's interfering with your posture anyway. And then we'll just drop all of that and calibrate where we're at now and then move forward. And then we also had Dr. Don that was doing those freaky cases of those people, the most extreme, horrendous psychological stuff they've been through I've ever heard of. And he talks about them just getting to talk about the situations over and over again. And he says they don't even have to say the words. They can use a word like flow and just describe it and go flow, 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 flow. And he would make them do it over and over again. Again, it's all about this is where you're at. We can't change anything. It's just about, again, calibrating our emotions or to our memory so we can just move forward. And a lot of these people are doing that same sort of, they're not tricks, because we're talking about paraplegics walking again. We're talking about people that have been in jailed for things that they didn't do and then, losing everything and then kind of being okay with that, dropping all of that anxieties and stuff. It's a very powerful thing, this thing. Also, it's funny because I surround everyone that surrounds me when we do podcasts, we do seminars and even when we write blogs and articles, I train everyone around me to, in their mind, be thinking, so what? And I want them to challenge me. I'm happy for every question to come back as, so what are you telling me this for? Or so what does this mean to me? Or so what do I do tomorrow? So what do I do Monday? With that phrase, so what, is so powerful because but I've never looked at it as a self-reflection. I've always looked at it as a way to make sure I'm giving value out to other people, to make sure that there's no one left with questions going, there's holes here, like, so what's the point? But how freaky are these themes? And we see it all time. I mean, man, we started doing this podcast talking about weird science and tips to to build muscle, burn more fat, but it's so mental, all of this stuff. Unless you're working holistically, nothing changes.
Well, it's so mental. And the other thing that's very much the common denominator of the ones you're talking about, and they're the therapies that I appreciate the most, are let's start now and look forward. Because traditionally, psychoanalysis is all about, let's look back. What did your mother do? Blah, blah, all this stuff. And I'm not saying there's not value in that and there aren't things in the past that impact who we are. In fact, of course there is. But at the end of the day, it's actually, and I like to look at the analogy of a boat. Like if you look at a boat, that's wake. All of that is wake, right? None of that is pushing the boat forward. What's pushing the boat forward is the engine. Let's decide what that engine's going to be and work on that.
Yeah.
Because all that other stuff is the wake. And I had a very good friend who was destroyed over the fact that he really bought into all of the reasons he came up to with his analyst about why he was screwed up. And they worked on some really bulletproof excuses for why he was screwed up that became a shield that you couldn't even try and help him because, well, look at all these things that happened to me. And of course, my therapist says, of course, I'm going to be like this.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about hypnosis and the modalities you're talking about is it all says, great, that all happened. 100%, completely agree. Let's not try and tweak that or work on that or change that because we can't. It's there. Let's accept right this moment for what it is, this very moment, and what's the best next thing we can do. So not what's the next best thing, because the next best thing sounds like the second best thing. But at any given moment, what's the best next thing you can do? So, you get somebody who quit smoking or they stop drinking or they start a new diet and suddenly it's Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're stuffing their face with Smarties. And they honestly, you hear this all the time. It's, well, today's shot, so I might as well just binge and I'll start again tomorrow. It's like, no, this second, it doesn't matter if it's Tuesday at noon or Sunday at midnight. This is the only second that you have. What's the best next thing for you to do? And if you always look at it like that, and like you say, with Ken Weir, and you told me a little about him in Tahoe, and I love those stories. But the idea about let's not spend a whole lot of time worrying about all this other stuff. Let's look at right this moment. Let's stand a little straighter. Let's tweak this. Let's change that. Let's get you lined up here, and then let's see what you can do. And that's what I do a lot coaching wise, and a lot with hypnosis. It would be, or the other thing that you can do with hypnosis, and it sounds like the other one, which was basically systematic desensitization that the other guy was doing, where it was just tell me that story again and again and again until it's lost all of its power. With hypnosis, you'll go back to that moment that somebody made that decision, whether as a child or a traumatic event that happened to them, and they decided that this is the thing that's now screwed me up. And all you have to do is go back to that, and at that very moment, stop and just freeze it and say, now let's right now come up with what you wish was the decision you'd made. So if you decided instead that I'm awesome because I survived this, rather than I'm a piece of shit because this happened to me, imagine if at that moment you'd made that decision. So let's go back to that moment, pause everything and make that decision and really anchor that decision. And then you'll actually play their life forward ever since. Like you can sort of do a like life flashing before your eyes where you see everything. But in a couple of sessions, say, now remember when you were 30 and that other thing happened and you blamed it on that thing? Let's reinterpret that. And so again, all it's saying is it's not really even working with the past. It's going back to the past and working with the present. It's saying at that moment, it's not past anymore, it's present. Let's just simply make a more powerful decision. Awesome. Let's go to this moment. It's present, it's not past. Let's make a more powerful decision. And then you come forward without all those terrible decisions we make along the way. I have a terrific coaching client who at 7, he remembers absolutely when his stepfather turned and smacked him and told him he was useless. And he said, I was a happy kid until that moment. I remember being a happy kid. And I know that ever since then I've been unhappy. And you can have all kinds of therapy trying to help you recognize that your stepfather did this or anything else. Or, okay, but now you're a 53-year-old man. Why don't we decide right this minute to be happy from here on forward? How much power is there in that? So yeah, sorry, we're preaching to the choir. We're in violent agreement on this, but there's so much more power in. I accept that every single thing that's happened until right now got me to here, and where all the power lies is what am I going to do from here going forward. So again, it's funny to put that into a racing context. Because a lot of people come to me and they say, hey, I'm going to sign up for this really hard challenge. I'm going to climb a mountain. I'm going to do whatever. What advice do you give me? And the advice is to know unequivocally it's going to suck at some point. To know now. So when you get to that, it's not like, oh man, this sucks. You're going to pre-decide who you're going to be about it. And I have a saying, a philosophy that whatever that thing is that bothers you, and especially if it's something that bothers you repetitively, that thing that bothers you about your business partner, about your spouse, about whoever, that thing that bothers you. And when people say my pet peeve, I hate that term because it's like this thing I'm going to keep alive. I'm going to feed and groom this peeve, right? But that thing that you know is going to trigger you, you need to recognize in advance, oh yeah, that's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I also know it's going to pass. And who am I going to be about that? That's the only thing I can decide. I can't decide if it's going to happen or not, because we all know it's going to happen. It's happened so many times that it's the thing that's going to happen. But when it happens, am I going to every single time pretend it's completely blindsided me and I can't believe it and throw a big hissy fit tantrum, right? Every single time? Yeah. Or am I going to presuppose that I know this is going to happen? Here's who I want to be about it. And I actually worked with some clients recently on saying, okay, you need to recognize what it's going to be. You need to rehearse it, and you need to anticipate it. So I recognize that this thing that drives me crazy. Okay, cool. So now anticipate it happening and rehearse it. Well, when this happens, I'm going to be like this. When it happens, I'm going to be like this. And so I have a guy who really, really good entrepreneur. And he said, he's got 4 young kids. And he said, I hate who I am when I walk in the door because they're on me like crazy and I want to be a great dad. And I'm immediately yelling at them. I need some space. Give me some time, blah, blah, blah. And we said, okay, well, let's practice that. Like, you know how it's going to be. And you know, the second it's starting to happen, you can feel who you're about to be, but you've never practiced being somebody else. So we would actually do coaching sessions around him treating me like his kids and like being great about it and everything else. And then you rehearse it so that when it actually happens, you just say, okay, I know who I'm going to be about it instead. So in every situation in life, if you just embrace in advance that shitty stuff is going to happen and know that that's your opportunity to show up powerfully, then you actually recognize that every single time something bad happens, that's the opportunity. And I know I've used this analogy before about a movie. You know, people want to have this straightforward life where their guidance counselor teaches them how to do well in school so they can get a good education, they can go to a good college, so they can get a good job, so they can have a good pension, so they can retire and play golf. And I would never, ever pay to watch that movie, and neither would you. Instead, we pay to watch movies about everything going completely sideways, right? I don't want my daughter to be kidnapped by terrorists, but man, it makes a pretty good movie. And so every single time something goes wrong in your life, that's the movie. That's what people are paying to see. That's what sells the popcorn. And you should actually embrace every single thing that happens as an opportunity to show up powerfully. Because if it's just TikTok all the time, there's actually I believe it was Australian. Do you know Stuart Wilde? He was an author, speaker years ago. He talked a lot about the TikTok, and I always talk about the TikTok, and now I feel like I'm talking about teenage social media. You're like a creeper every time you say TikTok now. Yeah. But we spend so much time in the TikTok, and we just want everything to go tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. And the minute it goes outside of that, well, that's where all the interesting stuff is anyway. And so why do we resent that so much?
It does make a better story, but I think a lot of it, there's always that fear of missing out. Like you're saying, there's that fear of losing things. There's that, that's a big driving factor for a lot of things. And I think also that comparing yourself to what your imagination of how things would go, or, what you planned. And I think that's where a lot of people think that they've done everything they can, or they work towards something, and then it all gets taken away when they're really hard to deal with. But the reality is that's when we kind of make yourself. That's when you become that tougher person.
100%. Absolutely. And imagine you get to be 95 and you're sitting on the rocking chair beside your buddy who also happened to get to be 95, and you don't have any stories to tell. Like there is, Joseph Campbell, who wrote about the hero's journey, it's all about leaving your comfort zone, finding conflict resolution, bringing that knowledge back, reintegrating it, and then starting again.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have that one adventure, because you come back changed from it and you come back stronger. And so now you're able to go and have another adventure. And so every single time we go out, stumble, fail, ultimately succeed, reintegrate that into our lives, we're now capable of more. And so, of course, you're going to go out and do more and more and more. And
Amazing.
I'm not saying that every single person is wired like that. There are people who are content to just go plodding along. And, I joke about professional sports. There are some people who, as long as their football team wins on Sunday, everything's good.
Yeah.
And, all the power to you. And hopefully you'll have that pension. Hopefully the golf course will stay open, everything else. That's awesome. But even that, there's still, they're out there cheering and their team may lose. So there's adventure in that too. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when your team loses? But I would much rather, when I did a podcast, I'm one of the hosts of the Spartan Up podcast, but I was the guest on one that Joe interviewed me. And the title of it was Johnny Waite Wishes You a Hard Life. Yeah. And the idea was, so many people wish for an easy life, wish for a hard life, and wish to be badass enough to tackle it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no power in, people want to win a lottery. Well, why? So people can whisper, "Oh, he's only successful because he won a lottery." Like, they don't build statues for lottery winners, right? Like Rocky had to fight his way there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, Johnny, I love your life because you said 2006 you were living a comfortable life. 2008 you were living out of your car. 2010 you were directing, death races. And you got this wonderful saying here. You said, an easy life is no life at all. So I love that saying. So do you want to elaborate on your story and how, you came to that statement, which I totally agree with, actually?
Well, so I'm very, very blessed. I've had a great life. I have great parents, great family. There's so many good things have happened to me. And yet, even with all that, I managed to do a massive faceplant in 2008. So I built a successful real estate business, my own brokerage, had a bunch of staff, making lots of money, living in a big house. I had sort of that, that perfect life. Everything was picture perfect, a wonderful family.
TikTok, basically?
No, it wasn't out then.
You were just TikToking back and forth.
It wasn't out then.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, exactly. And then it's funny. I sort of rolled the dice on some politics. When I explained it to Americans, they don't understand how our system works. We have the same system. We have the parliamentary system. I was running to be a member of parliament. I was a suit wearing, tie wearing, clean cut guy.
I can't imagine this.
Oh no, I know. Isn't that funny? And my wife Andrea says she never would have dated that guy, so that's good. But I was running to save the world, and it was in a minority government. There's no election that year, and I spent the entire year kissing babies, shaking hands, campaigning. Shut down my business to do it. I spent all my money on the campaign, and at the end of the year, there was no election. And I also realized that the tide had turned where very, very clearly the party I was running for was not going to win. And not that I bailed out because it was hard, but I realized that, wow, I've leaned my ladder against the wrong building here that I've been climbing up. Like, this is not going to work out well. The real estate market went in the toilet. I couldn't get my business back up and running. My first wife and I had a conversation about what we wanted in life and realized, wow, we're on such different paths. We just never realized it. And over the course of a year, broke up amicably. My business shuttered. The campaign ended, and I had nothing. Like, I really moved into my truck. It had a cap on the back, and I put a mattress in it. And from March till October, I slept in my truck. And this was having the year before been nominated for Citizen of the Year and Business Leader of the Year in my town. Like, it was a pretty spectacular fall. But the great thing about it was that I was very, very happy before that, and I was very, very happy during that time. Wow. Like, I realized when I'd be lying out in my truck in a thunderstorm, looking at the beauty of the night around me and realizing I'm still dry. I mean, I was able to feed myself today. I went back to bartending, which I'd done in my youth, and I met some great people. And then along the way, when I was a realtor, I did some real estate coaching people on how to be better salespeople and how to balance their life and work. And so I realized that, okay, I still have the same skills that I built up then. So all the skills that I gained then, I can now apply. So I went and I started studying coaching, and I studied hypnosis as a tool in coaching. And so within a year, I had a clinic and I was coaching people and I was doing hypnosis. And then I stumbled into the racing and did really well at that because of all these life experiences I'd had. And then I ended up doing race directing. And so for the last 10 years, I've been an international race director. I've traveled all over the world. I think I've been to 25 countries professionally, like putting on races. And this is in 2008. I was sleeping in the back of a Ford pickup truck, and I've spoken in a bunch of different countries, and I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people to their own different successes, all because of, or at least subsequent to, my own failures that turned into experience, that turned into something that was valuable to apply. But the other thing is, I was happy before, I was happy during, I'm happy now. And I realized that my happiness is not contingent upon what's happening to me at that time. And a very pertinent conversation. I had a friend who said to me, he said, listen, you got to be straight with me. This is when I was living in my car and like reading library books down at the park for entertainment because it's what I could afford to do. And he said, listen, square up with me. He said, don't give me all the crap about you're happy. He said, you can't be happy. He said, Johnny, you're divorced, you're broke, you're homeless. How can you say you're not unhappy? I said, well, because I'm already divorced, broke, and homeless. Why would I add unhappy to that? Like, I have no control over those things right now, but I have control over why would I want to add unhappy to that mess? Yes. And it was true. So, but the key to that is that some people, and I actually, I have an idea. I'm actually going to put it out here and somebody can steal it. It'll put a little pressure on me to actually start a new podcast. I want to do a podcast called Shitting the Bed. And the podcast is interviewing people who have succeeded at a reasonably high level, like I had, failed pretty spectacularly through their own choices. So it can't be that you won a lottery because that's like seeing through your own thing. And it can't be that you got hit by a car. Like, these things are in control. But Lance Armstrong is a great example, right? Succeeded, failed. Tiger Woods succeeded, failed. But then what do you do with it afterwards? Because Charlie Engels, a guy, a great runner, he did Running the Sahara, where there were 3 guys that ran across the Sahara Desert, 50 miles a day for 110 days nonstop. Yeah. And Charlie'd been a very successful Wall Street broker, went to jail for embezzlement, and it turned out he'd had tremendous addiction problems and everything else. And while he was in jail, he turned his whole life around, cleaned himself up, and now he's one of the world's great runners, an incredibly inspiring, interesting, awesome guy. But that's a really great example, right, where things happen. And you can make a terrible decision and end up way down here. And are you going to stay there, or are you going to say, oh, okay, well, here's where I am. What do I want now? Yeah. So little tidbits too. This is a funny coda on that, is that in 2009, I went and I bought myself a sailboat because I decided I wanted to live in a sailboat. And it's something I'd always wanted to do. But at that point in my life, I was going from like living in my car to living in a sailboat, and I had 2 young kids who, they were with their mom right then. I had them lots, but they were living with their mom because there wasn't a lot of room in the back of my truck. And at that point, it would have been forced fun. Dad's having a midlife crisis, so therefore we're all going to move on to a 26-foot sailboat, right? Anyway, so I had the sense not to. This week, I actually went and bought a beautiful 28-foot sailboat that sleeps 6, and now my kids get to decide if they want to come sleep on it or not because they're 24 and 22. Right. But there's another great example of, that's something I've always wanted to do. And the reason we did it is because of all this craziness in the world. We're not going to be snowboarding down in Colorado this winter. We're probably not going to go rafting in the Grand Canyon like we plan to do this winter. Yeah. So let's invest some time and money in learning how to sail in Georgian Bay, the greatest freshwater body of water in the world. So there's an opportunity in absolutely everything. No matter what happens, there's an opportunity in absolutely everything. And you talk to people who have near-death experiences, and they talk about how their relationships get so much deeper out of it. Or right now, with COVID, if you've had something yanked out from underneath you, that job, it may be that you just are pining for it. You wish you could have that. Okay, double down and work harder on creating that again, because you now realize that thing you used to take for granted for. What a huge gift to realize that the thing that's been so wonderful that you actually didn't see as wonderful, and you're going to work for it and appreciate it even more this time. Or you dread it. You think, oh my God, I never want to have to go back to that crappy job that I used to have. Awesome. That's a huge gift that you now know how much you didn't like it, where before you're just going through the motions. This is a great opportunity to go a different direction. And before we started, we're sort of talking about some of the things that people say, and people say everything happens for a reason. And I love that saying, as long as I can say, and I decide what the reason is.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right. Because that's a theme, Johnny. That's a theme coming through what you're saying today. Like, it's all about choices, and when you think you got nothing left, you can always choose something, even if it's just choosing your attitude or choosing on what you're going to focus your attention on in that moment, or choosing whether you're going to distract yourself or focus on something, So again, with choices, we have the opportunity to understand where we're at and then choose a path forward. That seems to be the current theme, and coming into this COVID and into 2020, it's probably never been more important to understand the fact that you've A lot of stuff in this world is out of our control. Our choices and our attitude and where we choose to focus our energy is something that we do have control over. And if we can actually use that wisely, we can actually become better in most of these opportunities.
Amazing. And you know, look, I could seriously talk all day about this because I love I want to know more about the death races.
I know. It's in Brooke over there doing that.
Brooke's
I've got the feeling we can't talk about this all day, Steve.
I want to hear about death races.
Sure. Well, I want to give you one more paradigm around that whole idea about choosing, and it's this: we are trained and taught to be consumers. It's what we are, and it's what the world needs us to be. You know, for our this mess we've created to keep functioning, and so we sign up for races so that we can feel good. We consume podcasts, which is great. You know, there are things like, I'm not against being a consumer. For example, I am a terrible musician, but I love music. So I consume music. That's great. And I appreciate it. But for the most part, we wake up in the morning and we feel lack. There's something I need. I need that coffee to feel good. So you go and have that coffee. That's fine. And then I need to go to this job so I can, you know, and so every single thing we do, we're consuming, instead of realizing that you can produce so much. Like when you wake up in the morning, before you start looking at what can I consume to feel better, it's okay. I'm going to produce some good energy, or I'm going to produce some results. And whatever it is that you want, like I want to be loved. Great. Produce love. Be more loving towards people. Produce that. And when you realize that it's in producing that all the good stuff happens, you guys produce a podcast. You guys produce a great product. These are the things that then you get enriched by because you're producing value for other people. Yeah. But they don't teach that in school. We're taught that if you can go and do this job, fill this widget, right, and not even see purpose in it, but just do this thing so you can get paid, so you can consume the things that will make you happy. And right now, when so many of those things have been pulled away from us, and so when I talk to friends who are like, they're bemoaning the fact that they can't race, I say, awesome. But when you're consuming that race, I have nothing against consuming the race. I need them to consume because I want to put them on. But what did that represent to you? What was that thing that you were getting from it? Okay, now how can you produce that somewhere else? And so that's the biggest shift a person can make is, and when I make a farming analogy, I say to people, from a food standpoint, I'm a food consumer, right? I go and I buy food, and I need to produce something somewhere else so that I can buy food because I don't produce food. Now, if I could grow my own food, I wouldn't need to do that. That's fine. So growing your own food gives you some power. But what if you grew enough food for other people too? Then all of a sudden you have a business, right? And that's exactly what I do with my business with the coaching is rather than wait for somebody else to show me how I can get my shit together, it's okay, well, what if I could do that and then actually help people with that? What if I could produce positivity? What if I could produce power? What if I could produce momentum? What if I could produce consistency, accountability, all these things for people? Then there's actually more than I need, and I now get rewarded for that. But what I'm trying to teach people along the way is don't always, for my coaching clients, I don't want you to be my client for the next 10 years. Like I would much rather help you to get to where you can be a producer of all these things you want in your life. Produce that. So that's the other shift on that is becoming a producer.
That's clever.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so much to dig into here, but we are a bit out of time. But we'd love to have you back again sometime. Would you be happy to come back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, guys. I love everything about when I met Matt and you guys down in Tahoe, the energy that you guys have is fantastic. I love Australia to begin with. I've been down there many, many times for racing. And so yeah, I will join you guys anytime. I really enjoy this.
That's so cool.
Maybe you can come live here and, when this whole COVID thing is in the rearview mirror and we can move on with normal life, I reckon that'd be great. But look, thanks so much for giving up your time today. And I'm sure you're widely appreciated by our listeners. And it's been a joy listening and your perspective is completely unique. And I love your story. And I still love those death races. I want to talk to you more about that privately. That's amazing. But because it sounds like something stupid they'd be probably keen to do in a midlife crisis like I am. So, but thanks again. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for today. It's been amazing. And we'll draw this to a close now, Matt. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I want to watch you do a death race. I want to see Steve-O cry. You can't offend him. It's really hard to make him sad and stuff. So Yeah, I reckon I want to watch him do a death race.
Yeah, I'd be
I want to
too.
get involved in your part of it where I'm going to organise how to screw with people.
So yeah, you and I'll go offline. I'll give you some psyop tips for that. So
We can do that. All right. I'm going to
Business card, screwing with people.
Old nipples
Great.
over here. I
Yeah.
can't offend him no matter
Yeah.
what.
Love
it. All right, well, then, and I do have one more question. I can't remember the name of that band you got me addicted to in Lake Tahoe. There was a Trunk Thumpers or some truck thing.
oh, truck fighters.
Yes.
Was
What
it
was-
truck fighters?
Yes, that was brilliant, and I had it on my Spotify, and then I was listening to it, and then it all changed, and I was sitting there, what the hell is that bloody thing? Because I love my
So
Radio Birdman and all that, so we got very similar taste in music by the sounds of that stuff.
So I don't know if I had just seen them when I saw you. I think it was just after, actually. I went and saw them with my son and his friends
Yeah.
in Toronto, and oh my God, what a great show.
Yeah.
You know what? That's what I miss more than anything right now is live music.
Yeah.
It's killing me.
yeah,
Musos
yeah.
are wonderful people, you know. So
Well, you'll have to produce it, Johnny.
There you go. Exactly.
absolutely,
I can
mate.
play a mean bottle. Yeah,
Yeah, good old music. Yeah, all good stuff.
Well, thank you
thanks.
guys. I'm glad that all came together. Thank you.
Oh, terrific. All
We'll
right,
talk
well, you have a
again
great
soon.
day. We'll see you soon.
See you, Johnny.
Bye, mate.
Yeah.
Rock on, guys. Ciao.